Buenas tardes. I hope you've had a nice, invigorating coffee break and a short break, but nevertheless, here we are, back continuing with our sessions. Now we are going to talk about a key issue, a key driver for the future energy landscape. This format is called a Fireside Chat, and the title is Stories of Transformation, Batteries Made in Europe. Much needed batteries. The session will be moderated by Maive Rutte, Deputy Director General for the Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs and the European Commission. So Maive, if you want to come and join me on the stage to moderate it and to introduce us to your guest for the Fireside Chat, Tavi Madiberg. Welcome on stage to both of you.
A very good afternoon to everybody. I realize that those who are in the room, you really must be real proponents of the new battery value chains and battery-based technologies and all of this, since we realize we are in tough competition with coffee outside and even sunshine somewhere. But we do have today a really great speaker, so I'm hoping that further people will come in. Exactly. The sessions are starting, so please come in. I have today with me somebody who is making big waves in Europe. I have with me Tavi Madiberg, who is, amongst other things, also my compatriot from Estonia. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to interview him today. He is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Skeleton Technologies. And Skeleton is one of these important players in European battery value chain that is based on really unique technology. We have, or rather you have, patented raw material, curved graphene, which offers very high power density and almost instant charging and discharging, high reliability, extreme temperature tolerance, and lifetimes of more than 1 million charge, I understand, and discharge cycles. Yes. So Skeleton is originally from Estonia, but now has also manufacturing in Germany. And Tavi is a man of European magnitude, is also involved in a number of European level, let's say, consultancy, or should I rather say bodies where you give also advice to the Commission. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. Yeah.
So we thought of using the few minutes we have to really dive right into the batteries and why they are important. And let me ask the first question, Tavi. Why do we say that batteries are actually a strategic issue at all? So what makes them strategic?
Yeah, I think first we need to look at the big picture. If we start with the GDP of EU, we are looking at around about 16 billion euros. Out of that, about 4 trillion is industrial manufacturing. So, and now if you look at the global battery industry, according to different analysts, by 2030, we are looking at a €500 billion market. By 2040, when energy storage comes into play, besides the automotive market, we are looking at the industry with a global market size of 1 trillion. And now you might ask that, okay, how does it compare in parallel with the rest of the industries? Do you know what's the global power generation market? Global power generation market is about 2 trillion. So batteries 1 trillion, global power generation about 2 trillion. So the industry has size. But now the question is that size itself doesn't make it strategic. I could compare the battery industry today with the semiconductor industry in the 1980s. If you look at the advancements in material technology, in AI, when, of course, we can take a viewpoint like we took in the 80s that all the semiconductors can be manufactured by TSMC in Taiwan because it's so easy to do and everybody can handle that. And I think that we are at the bifurcation point where we need to really see the strategic impact that the batteries are as important for Europe as semiconductors.
But that, I think, is a very good point you're making. So first of all, when we talk about batteries, we have this tendency to think that it's all about electric vehicles. But what you're putting in front of us is that we are really talking about a major market for storage capacity, which is something that we very much need, of course, for the new renewables-based energy system. And on this background, we have really huge market opportunities, huge market growth coming up, both for the electric vehicles, of course, but the storage as well. And if we are not watching out, then a similar situation might happen as we have seen in case of the chips. But then on this background, again, it's also a bit of a warning that member states, policymakers, also at EU level, we might need to take some action. So what action would be needed?
Yeah. So firstly, if you look at the current market growth, then it's true that current battery industry growth is coming from automotive. But if you take a little bit longer term view in terms of next 20 years, it's clear that energy storage, grid and industrial has more potential actually than the automotive market itself. But now as for the actions, if you look at the market today, we have 27 different jurisdictions when it comes to energy storage. This means that we do not have a scalable platforms nor a unified market. And we need to look at, if you talk about the battery strategy, it's very easy to talk about the battery strategy and say that we have our own winning strategy. But now if you compare it with US and China, it's almost the exact same strategy. We need to have internal supply, we need to have raw materials, we need to have scale. I think that in terms of grid and industrial and energy storage, Europe has a natural advantage. And advantage because if you look at the main power integrators from Siemens to ABB and others, we have that competence. Same when it comes to heavy-duty equipment and the industry, for example, both in France, Germany, Italy, but also here in Spain. And we should use that natural advantage. Now from EU side, what do we need? We need a unified policy when it comes to grid-scale energy storage. But each transmission system operator, each jurisdictions would not make their own rules. And that creates a scalable platform. By doing that, we can actually have an advantage over US and China. And I think that I would add here an additional angle. We talk a lot about European strategic autonomy. But one thing what we need to keep in mind is that we can't do it alone. We need to find more partnerships in the like-minded countries. I bring the example of Japan, that Skeleton, my company, is working very closely with our Japanese strategic partner, Marubeni. And what we see is that the question is not only about capital investments, but the question is really in terms of the knowledge transfer and partnership. And we need to focus more on regions where we can actually have collaboration and more synergies. Japan and Korea are good examples out of that.
Very good points. Let me maybe come back to things you said about the regulation and regulatory space that needs to be unified and coherent, of course. I think a good point already is that if instead of 27 different member states regulations, we have unified European level, so single market basically is essential to provide this platform to scale manufacturing. Would you say that what you currently see coming from Europe, either the battery regulation, I know you may not yet see all the details of it, but you know what you know of it, also maybe what you have seen through the Battery Alliance, bringing industry together, would you see that we are going in the right direction, or are there some elements which are missing?
Yeah, I think the direction actually is completely right, but there's an old saying that it's not about, let's say, being right, it's about being right at the right time. So we definitely have a clear need for speed here. If you look at the initiatives, when European Battery Alliance has been actually, for the companies, a very practical thing. Because if you think about standardizations when it comes to recycling, CO2 emissions, battery passport, when we need to unify that space, because if we do not unify that, then later on we will be following somebody else's standards, whether they come from Asia, whether they come from US. And from the standardization perspective, I would maybe point out one thing. But clear is that if you think about batteries, then we need to look at the end goal, that we are here to reduce CO2 emissions and make sure that during the production process we do not emit more emissions than we save. But there's a competitiveness angle as well. But if you look at the market, then there's a distinct reason why Airbus sells much more planes here in Europe than in US, and same goes for Boeing, vice versa. So if we are in the forefront of having the proper standards in place, that actually goes into creating additional competitive advantages in Europe. It's clear that we can't compete on cheap labor. It's also clear that we will not have an advantage in terms of mining at economies of scale. We need to really differentiate when it comes to our strategy, because otherwise we can't have a sustainable future. And in terms of sustainability, we need to have more discussions that no climate solution is sustainable if the companies and the products behind it are not financially sustainable and profitable.
Very good points. On the, maybe on a couple of things to go a bit deeper, the value chain approach, or let's say also supply chain approach that you are referring to when talking about Boeing and Airbus, I think is a very interesting comparison as well, since indeed what we hope to achieve with the Battery Alliance is that these players would come together. And they don't need to be only, of course, all European. This we also, I think, all understand. We are talking about European Battery Alliance, but the alliance already today is, of course, looking at neighboring countries and is open to work with like-minded partners. So I think the point about diversification of our partners and working with like-minded partners is very essential, but similarly really looking at not only a singular element in the value chain, but trying to have value added coming together in Europe, and that's where the Battery Alliance, of course, can help. Plus, of course, people like yourselves going and meeting, maybe even in events like this one here, trying to find, you know, the contacts which can be helpful. Now, coming to something that you also mentioned, this interest of ours to move fast, but also move fast in the right direction. Yeah. So maybe a couple of elements that are indicating this right direction. One of them is making sure that the future products are really environmentally and climate friendly. So for this, we have life cycle analysis, we look at the best available technologies, we also look at opportunities to use different raw materials compared to what have been there before. So maybe on this kind of life cycle and evaluating the sustainability, maybe you have some elements to add, because batteries are, of course, something that take some of these raw materials which are in rather scarce availability. And the other element, maybe for further comments, is the product passport you mentioned. Yeah. Because that's, I think, very essential as well. We are working on digital product passport as a tool for batteries and for other products. So how would these two, digitization as well as a life cycle analysis, impact on batteries?
I think that in terms of life cycle analysis, we need to focus on one thing. We can't only look at how much CO2 emissions is needed to manufacture the battery itself. We need to really look at the energy throughput, meaning that during the useful life, that how many cycles can the battery last. And I think that this is really the part of the regulation what can push the technology. Because currently I would say that if you look at the market, I bring a good example from, you remember the LED lights back in the 2000s. Maybe they were not yet the most efficient ones, but they had significantly more life cycles and a longer lifespan compared to the light bulb. And little bit in the battery industry, we are in the same place where we are talking a lot about how can we do mining in Europe. This is really the right topic to discuss, but we should be pushing in the regulation how can we build longer lasting products which have an advantage on a global scale. And I think that while doing that, maybe my last point is that we need to really build global champions. In this business, you can't be successful by being a unicorn. You can't be successful by maybe being a 10 billion company. But if you look at the global market, today out of the tech top 30, 2 European companies, ASML and SAP. Now in the battery industry, already the largest company in China, CATL, they are over 100 billion. And we have a real chance here to build champions. And we can't be satisfied with saying that Asian companies will build plants in Europe, problem solved. No, it's not. That is not sustainable from a perspective that economic growth needs to go hand in hand with fighting climate change.
Very much so. And maybe a last statement from you. You mentioned to me, and already in the earlier comment, that Europe has some, let's say, advantages and some strengths which we can use and build on. Maybe you just mention it again for the energy storage as well as maybe the mobility related batteries.
So, 2 things. We need to look outside of also automotive. Firstly, power grids. The main integrators globally, they are European companies. They are the Siemenses, ABBs of this world. Secondly, heavy-duty equipment. This is everything from construction equipment to port cranes, other heavy-duty machinery. This is where the European industry excels at. All of that will be electrified. And this is really a chance to be different. Second topic, of course, we always talk about that Europe has great R&D. But now it's really the time to put the material science into work, because it's not about whether we can have more lithium and whether we can mine more lithium at a cheaper cost. It's about technologies which would actually use less lithium, be more sustainable, but also be better for the bottom line. The products and the companies need to be long-term profitable to make an impact for the European industry.
Very good. Thank you very much, Taavi, for your insights, and I think you have given us a good direction for making sure that we are not only talking about environmental sustainability, but actually the economic sustainability of the industries that are the industries of the future, and batteries certainly will be those. Thanks a lot, and to be continued.
Thanks.